Welcome back to another episode of UFC Casuals. I'm Bobby along with my co-host Andrew. And today we got a lot of big news to get into, and we'll be talking about UFC 295 as well. And this past Saturday's fight night card down in Brazil. Pretty uneventful one. Not uneventful, but the main event was uneventful, but a little bit of a lackluster card. But we got a lot more to talk about outside of that. We'll save that for the end. We'll say the worst for last there. We'll jump right into the big news. Some huge announcements for the first 3 months of 2024. Sean Strickland and Dricus du Plessis, they're headlining UFC 297. That'll be in Canada. That's in January, of course. Volkanovski and Topuria, they'll be squaring off for UFC 298 in February. That is rumored to be in Los Angeles, according to Topuria himself. So I'd say that's a pretty reliable source. Yeah. And the O'Malley-Vera fight, that'll be in March for 299. Not known where that is, but I'm sure we'll find that out pretty soon. Huge news, huge fights. What do you make of all these?
Yeah, got some exciting news to start this week after that, like you mentioned, horrible fight night main event last week.
Yeah.
But Dana White bringing the bangers as always. Some of these matchups, I love the matchups, by the way. But Sean Strickland versus Dricus in Canada is pretty random, and even like I get going back to Los Angeles, but is Sean O'Malley and Cheeto going to headline that card themselves? Like that's kind of a weak main event in my opinion. So I'm glad that these matchups were made. I think they're the right matchups, but interesting locations, and I hope the Cheeto and Sean fight isn't a main event because that's pretty weird.
It is. Dana said it was a main event, unfortunately.
Oh my goodness. Yeah,
pretty weak main event, but they're going with the star power of O'Malley. I mean, he'll get pay-per-view sales, but
I guess
quality of fight though not worthy of being a main event spot on a pay-per-view.
No, and obviously there's the rematch factor, right? And like you mentioned, they're trying to make Sean this big star, the next McGregor, whatever. Yeah. I don't see it him getting that big because nobody's ever going to get that big ever again. But if they really want to make this guy the face of the UFC, then yeah, sure, give him his own pay-per-view, I guess.
Yeah, it'll be during the month of St. Patrick's Day, I believe, in March. So
there you go.
A little bit of Irish stuff going on there for O'Malley. We'll get into Strickland and Dricus du Plessis though for the January card. We'll jump right into that. I'm glad Dricus got this shot. I'm glad it wasn't Hamzat. I think we all knew it wouldn't be Hamzat after it was announced with his injury, but it should have been Dricus from the jump. I mean, he TKO'd Robert Whittaker after winning round one. There should have been no doubt that he was next in line for this title shot. And it's an interesting matchup. I'm having a tough time predicting this. Obviously, we've got a lot of time before we got to come up with a final prediction. But looking at this matchup, I'm having a tough time figuring out who I think is going to win.
Yeah, and Sean Strickland's such a weird style to dissect as an opposing fighter anyway. And so, is Dricus going to get frustrated in this fight and look to grapple? It's been a long time since we've seen any grappling in a Sean Strickland fight, right? He's always wants to just stand there toe-to-toe and box it out. So, is Dricus going to try and mix it up? It'll be really interesting. I could definitely see it going to late rounds, as a lot of Sean Strickland fights do. Obviously, Dricus, crazy power. He's a huge guy. So, if anybody could stop Sean Strickland, it could definitely be Dricus. But, I think, the UFC never wanted Israel Adesanya to lose.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not going to say they're punishing Sean by making him fight in Canada and kind of not short notice, but like maybe shorter than he wanted to come back and fight somebody.
Yeah. I mean, he's got to jump straight into a training camp right about now.
Right. And he's not getting a huge money fight like a Hamzat fight would have been. Maybe this is another way they're trying to, I'm not going to say punish him, but they didn't want him to be champ anyways. They wanted this to be the Dricus and Izzy fight. That would have been a huge fight, and it didn't come to fruition for them. But who knows? It still could if Dricus becomes the champ. But it's going to be a good fight. Interesting stylistic matchup for sure.
Yeah, very interesting matchup. I think Strickland benefits, as we saw in his last fight, fighting against guys who don't push the pressure too much. And Adesanya, especially when he holds that belt, he doesn't push forward a whole lot. He fights off the back foot. And Strickland, with his defense, he's able to walk forward, and it frustrates guys who fight off their back foot. Dricus doesn't really do that. He has a weird style, and he pushes forward. And he also has the threat of a takedown. I mean, Strickland never had to worry about that when he was walking down Adesanya for 5 rounds. He'll have to worry about that against Dricus. There's no doubt. So it's a weird matchup. It's hard to get a good read on who I think is going to win. But like you said, really interesting stylistic matchup. And out of these fights, this is probably the one I'm most excited for, to be honest.
For sure. And just because it just feels so close on paper, right?
Yeah.
And Dricus, something I've noticed about Dricus, and we've talked bad about him a lot because, he kind of fights to the level of his opponent, right? Whether it was Darren Till, whether it was Derek Brunson. He fought to the level of them, and it was an ugly fight, a bad performance from him both of those times, if we're being honest. And but then off of that, to be the number one contender in middleweight for years and years, Robert Whittaker.
He smoked him too. He smoked him.
He fights to the level of his competition. He gets up for those fights and he matches their level every time. So I don't see why he couldn't do the same against Sean Strickland. Yeah. I mean, Sean Strickland's not some killer here, right? He could definitely match Sean Strickland's energy and push the pace on him.
Yeah, the only thing I'm concerned about, there's a few concerns I have just because of how weird this matchup is. But for Dricus, I'm worried about his gas tank. I know he had that nose surgery, and I know we thought all was well, but we really didn't see it tested in that Robert Whittaker fight. It only went 1.5 rounds. We didn't really get to see how far that gas tank can be pushed. And this is his first 5-round fight. So we really don't know what we're getting out of him after this nose surgery. He looked a lot better. His gas tank looked a lot better in the last fight. But who knows, because he really wasn't put into deep waters. I mean, we're talking about a guy going from, he's gotten finishes in each of his last, 3 fights, and all of those were 3-round fights. So now fighting in his first 5-round fight of his career, especially when his gas tank was such a problem at one point in his career. It is a little bit of a concern, but who knows? This fight, if Dricus wins, I don't think it'll go the distance.
And you want to talk about cardio in a matchup like this, a guy who spars every day, 6 times a week. Only day off is when he gets nicked up and he's forced to stop, right? So, you want to talk about a cardio king. One of these guys is a cardio king, and one of these guys, it's his major weakness, right, in past fights. So, a little stylistic nightmare there for Dricus, but he makes up for it in so many different aspects of this fight, whether it be his power, just his strength, and he's just a giant guy. I mean, he's such a muscled up freak, and he took down Robert Whittaker, with no technique, just tripped him using pure strength, right?
Yeah,
so
crazy strong.
It's going to be a gritty performance if Dricus wants to pull this out, but if anybody can do it, it's proven to be him. I mean, he pulls them out, man.
Yeah, that's what he does. That's what he does. Really exciting fight. I'm looking forward to that one. It'll be headlining the January pay-per-view card. And we'll move on to Volkanovski versus Topuria in Los Angeles in February. A fight we knew was going to happen. We weren't sure when. I'm glad it wasn't in January. That would have been a nightmare scenario for Volk. But he gets it in February, gets an extra month to heal up from the surgery he had prior to the Islam fight, the head kick knockout. He could take his time with this one, which is what we're all hoping for. And hopefully we get to see, a fully healthy Volk who has had a full camp, who's had plenty of time to prepare, won't be having any gut flabs. I'm just hoping to see Volk back in his peak shape.
Definitely. Get that man a full camp. We've seen what he does on a full camp numerous times. And he is a guy who likes to get back in there quick. So, a lot of people would have liked for him to wait even more than February. Yeah. Right after a devastating head kick.
I would have rather have seen the O'Malley Vera fight in February and this one in March, just so he had a little extra time off after that knockout.
You never want somebody to rush back after getting head kick KO'd, right? The head kick KOs are always scary, but it's a tough. I think it's a tough matchup. I mean, Topuria is a young, hungry prospect here. He's made not easy work of his opponents, but kinda. I mean, some of his opponents, he's up the ranks here. He's done a great job, just neutralizing their strengths and using his own strengths to his benefit and just dominating some of these fights. Obviously, the Josh Emmett fight, he dominated. There was always but it's Josh Emmett, right? So he hasn't beaten any top contenders like a Max Holloway per se. Nobody can beat Max Holloway besides Volk. Topuria, he deserves a shot. They didn't want to feed him to Max because we know how that would have went. Yep. And he's a young, hungry contender. It's going to be interesting, man. Especially,
I'm excited for it. Great boxing from Topuria, and he has that wrestling too. Obviously, he got that sub on Bryce Mitchell to end the fight. He's very well rounded. But so is Volk. It's going to be a great fight between two very skilled all-around fighters at featherweight. I'm really excited for this one. And I know people are worried about, is Volk going to rush back? Is his chin ever going to be the same after that Islam knockout? I'm not too worried about that against Topuria. And I know Topuria has knockouts, but I want to go through a list of the guys he's knocked out. All right, he's beaten Damon Jackson. Great knockout. It was a highlight reel knockout. It's Damon Jackson. Let's be fair about it. The next one was Ryan Hall, who, if you watch that fight, nothing but Imanari rolls. Embarrassing performance from Ryan Hall. That was pitiful. That I don't even want to count that one. That was Ryan Hall doing Imanari rolls until he got ground and pounded until it finished, until he was out cold on the mat. That was a weird fight altogether. And then the other one was Jai Herbert, which Jai Herbert, that he was getting the better of Topuria for a good portion of that fight. So look, Topuria is not invincible. And I know he has some knockouts on his record. And mind you, I didn't explain the Jai Herbert one. Very chinny, one of the chinniest featherweights in the division. Should be fighting a lightweight because he's big. He cuts so much weight, and he's gotten knocked out time and time again.
I want to say that fight was at lightweight too. They both went up a division and fought at lightweight. Yeah, it was. But
okay. But regardless, man, Jai Herbert's chinny. He's been knocked out so many times in his career. Whatever weight class it was at. Still, he's one of the chinniest fighters on the roster in general. Yeah. So he has knockouts on his record, and he has some impressive ones too. He put out Damon Jackson cold, put out Jai Herbert cold. But these aren't guys who have chin like Volkanovski. So I can see him catching him. I can see him catching Volk, maybe even scoring a knockdown on him. That's a very slight possibility of that happening. I just don't see him putting him out cold.
And will Volk even want to stand and trade with him is the thing, for a long period of time here. Obviously, if we're sitting for a long period of time, he'll get the better of him in the exchanges, no doubt. But just the threat of the power coming off a knockout head kick loss like that, is he going to even want to do it? When we've seen how good the wrestling's been in his past fights, like against Yair, right? I mean, that was a dominant performance from Volk. Took him down, ground and pound. It looked easy. I'm not saying Topuria is going to be that easy to take down and ground and pound, but it just brought a new aspect of Volk's game, leveled up that we didn't even know he could. And so will he even want to stand and trade with that power threat from Topuria? Sure. I mean, just if you look at it, Volk has more paths to victory, so he's going to be a big favorite in this. And it makes sense. He's the featherweight GOAT, man.
Yeah, he's one of the most dominant, probably the most dominant featherweight of all time. I don't think there's much debate about that anymore. And I love Topuria. I think he'll be the featherweight champion one day. I'm not so sure that he's going to get this one done against Volk, but I think he'll get there one day. But man, Volk's got that experience. He's been on this stage before. Although Topuria is one of the most well-rounded featherweights in the division, Volk is the most well-rounded, maybe one of the most well-rounded fighters on the roster. I wouldn't say the most well-rounded, but he's certainly up there. It's going to be a tough test for Topuria. But if he can get this done, that'll be a hell of a performance. Either way, it's the fight I'm looking forward to.
And even if Topuria loses this, he's so young. Like you mentioned, you think he'll be a champ one day. I agree, because he is so young. Volk's days are not numbered yet, but he's 35, right? So it's getting close. Those smaller weight classes, you don't want to be getting too old here and taking these hits from these young, hungry guys. Mm-hmm. And Topuria, we could see like a maybe the best thing that can happen to him here is a loss, just to humble him a little bit. Obviously he wants that title, but if he loses, it's not the end of the world for him. He has plenty of time. Go back down the ranks. Go beat Max Holloway. Yeah. Prove that you are the number one. Beat some of these top contenders like Ortega, like Yair, any of them. And prove, get back to fighting Volk or whoever the champ is at the time. And then I'm sure he'll be ready. He'll be at his prime and he'll get that title. But it might just be a little too soon here. I don't know.
I'm with you. We'll move on to Sean O'Malley versus Chito Vera, the headliner of the March pay-per-view. You're already shaking your head about this one. It is, fight-wise, it's a pretty weak pay-per-view main event. We know the lower weight classes don't usually, like flyweight and bantamweight, don't usually headline pay-per-views. But O'Malley, he has that star power, though. So we knew this was going to happen. We knew this fight, unless it was McGregor who was the main event, we knew this would probably be a main event on a pay-per-view. And here we are. We're getting it in March. What do you make of this one?
Yeah. We were dreaming of the McGregor headlined pay-per-view with Sean O'Malley as the co-main. It would have been amazing. Yep. And it would have made sense here, even with the St. Patty's Day, March thing, like you mentioned. But it doesn't come to fruition. And we get a Sean O'Malley Chito Vera rematch after Chito Vera gave Sean O'Malley his only loss. So there's, they got the story. Sean O'Malley's the star. And stylistically, it's going to be a really interesting fight because I think it's going to stay on the feet and anything can happen.
Yeah, I'll definitely stay on the feet. And we know Cheeto's not going to take it down to the ground because he has no grappling whatsoever. What was that? But yeah, this will be a very fun fight regardless. Revenge factor for Sean O'Malley here. I don't like this match. I know Cheeto won the first time around, but I think he's going to have a much tougher time this time around. O'Malley's much more experienced. He's a better fighter than he was in that first fight. And let's be real about it. It was a fluke win. It was a fluke win. He took out his perennial nerve or whatever in his leg, shut off his leg, which O'Malley has. His leg has gone out on him a few times. We've seen that before. We saw earlier in his career, he got his leg taken out late into the fight. And for some reason, I forget the guy he was fighting, but he shot for a takedown. And, that could have been O'Malley's first loss had that fight played out similarly to the Cheeto fight. Yeah. So it's happened before to him, but it's still such a fluky way to win. And O'Malley is so much more improved since then. So I think it's going to be a lot tougher for Cheeto this time around.
And that seems like an issue of the past at this point for O'Malley. He's beaten Jan. Yeah. Whether you think he won that fight or not, he on the scorecards he won it, and he won 2-1. And I personally scored it for him. So he beat obviously Jan's coming off some bad losses here, but a former champ. Right. So to get that number one contender shot off of Jan, not off of some, fluky stuff like the last fight we talked about, Topuria. Right. So, he actually beat the number one contender to get the number one contender shot. He took that title from Aljo. He knocked out Aljo, who was on a 10 fight something winning streak. So, dominated the division, beat Jan twice himself. So
could have been on his way to being the bantamweight GOAT. Could have been.
We were discussing it, I'm sure, leading up to that pay-per-view before he got knocked out. If he beats Sean, is he the So, Sean O'Malley has proven he's the champ, and Cheeto's got to go take it from him. He's beat him before, but you're not the champ. Sean's the champ. So, if you want to prove that first win wasn't a fluke, and the title shot that you don't deserve at all, right? Cheeto does not deserve this fight.
No,
he's not beating anybody to deserve a title.
Justice for Corey Sandhagen.
Right. Corey Sandhagen beat the shit out of Cheeto.
Yeah. And Cheeto somehow, and I know Corey's injured, but by this point, by March, he's going to be healthy.
Yeah. By March, he'll be back training by March. You could. Yeah.
Ridiculous.
What a horrible main event fight.
We knew they were going to do it, though. We knew it was coming. It was bound.
I wanted this fight if Sean O'Malley lost to Aljo.
Yeah, that would have been perfect.
For Sean to be coming off a loss to go get revenge on Cheeto. It would have made perfect sense. But the title shot for Cheeto should never, ever happen. No. He's never going to earn a title shot, and they just give it to him for free. Yeah. I'm not excited. Well, it's going to be a good fight. Don't get me wrong.
It'll be a great fight. It'll be fun to watch two exchanges on the feet. We know how great Cheeto's kicks are. Sean O'Malley, he's got some great leg kicks himself. He's got crazy good boxing. Obviously, we know about his precision, his speed. It'll be a fun fight. There's going to be some great exchanges on the feet.
And these bantamweights, man, they always put on exciting title fights. Just the fast hand speed of these smaller dudes. Even though Sean O'Malley's 5'11", he's just still that guy, man. I don't know how he makes that weight, but his hands are as fast as anybody in the UFC. So,
either way, maybe not deserving of the pay-per-view main event spot, but off of the name value, sure. So that'll be the one headlining the March card.
Got to make a new star. I guess he's already a star, right? So
grow
the star of Sean O'Malley, and hopefully he gets this win back.
Yep. We'll move on to UFC 295 taking place this weekend. The main event, Alex Pereira versus Yuri Prochazka for the light heavyweight belt. What a fight, man. We've been waiting for this one for so long. This is one of the best fights of all time. If we're just talking about on paper, this is one of the best matchups of all time. This is going to be fireworks. It's going to be Yuri, always puts on exciting fights, crazy knockout finishes. Alex Pereira, the crazy left hand he has, that left hook is so violent. This fight, probably not going to go the distance. I don't want to jinx it. I don't want to jinx it, knock on wood there. But hey, maybe if it does go the distance, it'll probably be fight of the year. So, but I am expecting to see a knockout in this one. Either way, this should be a fun fight. What do you make of this one?
A 5-round fight would entail either of these men's chins holding up, and I just don't see that being the case. No. Yuri is prone to getting knocked down, and you just talked about that devastating left hook that Alex Pereira possesses. But you can't count out Yuri either, because even though he does get hit, he comes right back and brings it right back at you with some flying knee, weird elbow, just jet the 1-2. His 1-2's good. He just lands shots and makes it a dogfight, right?
Yeah.
Yuri is the epitome of a dogfight, and he's a samurai. He sits in the fucking forest and sits in darkness, retreats, and yells to go to screams to go to sleep and shit. He's just a weird guy. And Alex Pereira is from the favelas. This man is a demon in his own right. So just in terms of two menacing human beings, I don't know how you could put two more menacing human beings in a cage together and just say, go at it, fellas. I mean, this is going to be insane, man.
It's going to be a hell of a fight. Like you mentioned with Yuri, leaving his hand down sometimes, having that susceptible chin, and how reckless he is, I'm worried. I'm very worried for him as someone who roots for Yuri. I don't know who to root for in this fight because I like both guys. I like both these guys. Very exciting fighters, easy to root for, cool personalities. So I'm worried for Yuri, man. You've seen so many times when he throws, he'll leave his other hand down so often, and that scares me. That scares me so much that he's going to get caught badly by one of Alex Pereira's left hooks. And he's been rocked in all three of his UFC fights. He got rocked against Volk and Uzdemir. He got rocked against Dominic Reyes. He got rocked against Glover Teixeira. And frankly, if Glover Teixeira didn't, I think he tried to go for he jumped into a guillotine in round 5. If he would have kept the pressure on and threw some more shots, he could have put Yuri out of there. It could have been a completely different outcome. So I'm really worried about Yuri's defense on the feet and how susceptible his chin's been in some of his fights.
And it's not even about leaving his hands down after he throws a strike. He leaves his hands down the entire fight.
Yeah.
Comes forward with his hands down, only looking to hit you.
Yeah.
And he just uses his stupid head movement. I'm not going to call it stupid. It works for him. He's never, he's only been knocked out once in his career, in a 30-fight career. So, and he's fought some good dudes, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you just mentioned he got hurt badly against Glover Teixeira, but he stuck it out and won that fight by sub. Yeah. And he showed a new aspect of his game that, if there is one weakness in Alex Pereira's game that we haven't really got to see a lot of, Jan Blachowicz held him down. Israel Adesanya took him down.
Yeah.
So Yuri could definitely take Alex down and sub him. He's proven he can sub a black belt, right? In Glover. So, Yuri's got to look to get some grappling exchanges in this fight, in my opinion, because if he wants to sit there with his hands down and use his silly head movement, like duck in, right? He's going to eat a head kick. He's going to eat a left hook. Something is going to knock him out cold. It's just waiting to happen. He's never faced someone with the power of an Alex Pereira. And, man, if he eats that left hook, it's night-night for Yuri, man.
Honestly. And like you said, the only way I think he can win this fight is if he mixes in the grappling. I think he's got to get takedowns. I don't think he's going to sub Alex, though. I don't see it happening. We saw Jan Blachowicz lay on Alex's back for a whole round, threaten to sub several times. Alex did a great job fighting off those submissions. His submission to defense is good. And that's something he's been working on since his move up to light heavyweight. He knew he was going to have to fight guys who do have grappling. Yeah. So that's definitely something he's worked at. He's already a top-level kickboxer. His striking is nearly unmatched. So we know what he's working on, and it's grappling. So I'm guessing his defense has only improved since then. So I don't see Yuri subbing him. But if he can mix in some takedowns, hold him down for a few rounds, and win some exchanges on the feet when they're up, there's a chance he wins this fight off points if it does go to a decision.
Yuri can certainly win some exchanges on the feet. You don't want him to stay on the feet for too long because the power is coming and the hands down is so scary. But, Alex is prone to getting hit himself. If you want to talk about leaving your hands down after throwing a strike, Alex Pereira is the perfect example in that Izzy fight. He got knocked clean out, right? He got overzealous. He thought he had Izzy in a horrible spot and Izzy with a straight right counter. I mean, it was that simple. And definitely Yuri could do that too. Like against the cage like that, if Alex Pereira gets overzealous, Yuri has major power himself. So Alex Pereira's got to watch out. He can't hunt too hard for the knockout. He's got to let it come to him. He's a glory kickboxing champion. He'll let it come to him. He knows how to do that. You can say in Adesanya fight, he saw red and he thought he was going to get the win and he got knocked out. I think he'll fight much smarter. And you want to talk about the grappling in that last fight against Jan? That was the first round he was getting held down and had Jan on his back. That's when you're at your freshest. Jan was gassed after that first round. He was done after that because he couldn't get that sub. So, if something early happens the same where Yuri gets his back and starts to gas in the later rounds, which he showed, in the Glover fight, he can gas in later rounds.
Yeah.
Alex Pereira can definitely take advantage, man.
Yeah, and something about the Glover Teixeira fight, we know that Pereira and Glover trained together. Glover caught Yuri on the feet. He caught him bad. He could have put him out of there. You know that Glover's got all types of tips for him on how to beat Yuri, and they've been working hard on that, I'm sure. It's going to be a hell of a fight. I'm predicting Alex to win. I think he's going to get out of there with a round 3 knockout. I think there's going to be a point in time where Yuri keeps it on the feet for too long, and he gets caught badly, leaving his hand down, and he gets chinned. I hate to say it because I love Yuri, but just my brain's telling me Alex is going to put him out.
And you're talking to a big Yuri guy here, so
yeah, it hurts to say it.
Hear that prediction, and to just, I've been thinking about this since this fight was announced, whether it was the co-main or the main event. It was a huge fight. It was kind of going under the radar because, John Jones was the main event, and this fight was kind of going under the radar. This fight always deserved to be a main event in its own right, just because of the prowess of both dudes. They can headline a pay-per-view, no doubt, even though their English isn't amazing. Who cares? Because their aura alone makes this an amazing fight. And that's why I love Yuri so much, but I gotta agree with you. I just think he's too reckless. I think surely somebody has to have been in his ear telling him to be more cautious in this fight. You just have to. But just that warrior Yuri's gonna come out at some point. He's gonna get reckless and he's gonna get knocked out. And I also said 3rd round in my prediction.
All right.
He's gonna get called a left hook, man. He's gonna go to sleep.
I see that same thing happening. Either way, who knows? Who knows how this could play out? I'm not sure who I'm rooting for here. I used to be against Alex, but man, he's too likable. He's too likable, and he's a crazy fun fighter. And when you're watching Alex, you're nervous. You're nervous no matter, even if you don't have a dog in the hunt, you are nervous because you know the power he possesses. So he's just a fun fighter to watch. And so is Yuri. So I'm just excited for this regardless.
I'm always like stamping my leg every time he's fighting, just waiting for him to land a massive shot.
My hand's always shaking.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And both of them, really. But during both their fights, it's just madness, shakiness. And that's what makes it the fight of the year contender on paper. And I hope that's what we get, man.
Absolutely. Speaking of fighters that'll have you on the edge of your seat, we're talking about the co-main event. Sergey Pavlovich and Tom Aspinall. Average finish time of about 3 minutes. So 2 guys that will have you nervous for a finish. This fight will likely end in the same way. It'll end in a finish. This is for the interim title in the heavyweight division. It's gonna be such a good fight. We've been waiting for this for so long, and we get it early. It's like an early Christmas present. I know we lose John Jones and Stipe Miocic, but this is a much better fight. I'm looking forward to this one.
And it just carries the heavyweight division so much more forward than that old man grandpa fight would have gave us. And we would have had a double retirement in the main event. And then we would have had this fight probably in January, February anyways. Yeah. So why not just get it done this year? We push the division forward. As far as I'm concerned, Stipe can retire. John Jones can retire. John Jones' legacy is proven. He doesn't need to beat these young, hungry heavyweights to prove anything else. He's the light heavyweight GOAT. He's the MMA GOAT. Just retire. Leave this division to some. Finally, the heavyweight division has some young, hungry contenders here. And we get, a matchup between maybe the 2 youngest and hungriest. Yeah. And it's going to be a great matchup, man. It kind of feels like the last matchup in some sorts where just Pavlovich is so scary with the hands that you want Aspinall to probably, mix in some grappling in this fight. But it's going to leave, like you mentioned, it's going to leave us on the edge of our seat the whole fight. And it's probably going to end quick. I mean, what you said, 3-minute average fight time? Ridiculous.
For both guys, yeah. And I know this is for the interim belt. I know we won't see either of them hold the official belt after this fight, whoever wins. But in all likelihood, my prediction at least, this is what I think is going to happen. I think this fight, the winner of this fight is going to end up being the champion. I think they're going to be the title holder in the heavyweight division. I'm guessing sometime next year you're going to get John Jones versus Stipe Miocic. They're going to make that fight whenever Jones is healthy. They're both going to retire, however it ends. And whoever's the vacant or the interim belt holder, they'll just be promoted up to the official champion of the division. So I'm looking at this fight as it's for the undisputed belt. I know it's not technically, but that's how I'm looking at it.
Yeah, it is just the future of the division is being proven in this fight right here.
Yeah.
One of these guys is going, but that you bring up an interesting point there. If late next year John Jones and Stipe fight, what is the interim champion in the meantime doing? Is he
defending the interim belt?
Yeah, like
ridiculous.
What? So we're just gonna have simultaneous heavyweight champions and
Yeah.
an interim champion defending it, while the undisputed champion, who's only had one fight in the division, who got an immediate title shot at heavyweight, is only had his one fight and he's injured. I mean, give me a break. Give me a break, man. Why can't John Jones just vacate the belt, come back, fight Stipe? There does legacy wise, he doesn't even need a belt. That
belt doesn't need to be on the line.
No. That fight makes perfect sense legacy-wise for both men, and no belts even needed. So, like you mentioned, this fight Saturday is in our minds and should be in everybody else's mind because this is the future of the division, the undisputed heavyweight champion. And, man, it's going to be interesting.
It is going to be interesting. Pavlovich, he's got the crazy hand speed. He's got the great boxing, and he has a Sambo background. He does have a Sambo background, so I know the only time we've seen him go down to the mat was in the Alistair Overeem fight, which he lost by TKO. But that was short notice against Alistair Overeem in his debut at a time where he didn't have much experience. So I'm not going to discredit him too much for that. I'm not going to question his takedown defense too much because of that one fight early in his career. And then Aspinall, he does have the grappling. He has that crazy speed. His movement at heavyweight is ridiculous. It's on par with Cyril Gane with his movement and how quick and twitchy he is for a heavyweight. It's impressive.
And that grappling was showcased in that Volkov fight.
Yep.
I guess that was a couple of years ago at this point because he's been injured. Obviously, he had the blown out knee in the Blades fight. But just seeing him take down Volkov that easy, it just brought a whole new aspect to the heavyweight division that hadn't been seen. I just know Cyril Gane was shaking in his boots. Every brawler was shaking in their boots, and Pavlovich is a pretty stoked man. He probably wasn't shaking at all, but he has to be wary of the grappling, though. I mean, it is probably Aspinall's main path to victory in this fight. Yes, he has the fast hands, and he has power in his own right. He's a big guy. He's 6'5", 250, right? I mean, that's an NFL D lineman throwing fist at you. So, I'm not saying Aspinall can't go out there and starch Pavlovich, but we haven't seen it. Nobody's matched the hand speed of Pavlovich, the power of him. That big Russian freak. And if this stays standing for too long, you gotta fear Aspinall's chin here. It might not be able to hold up against just a freak of nature with Ngannou level power.
Yeah. I'm worried about that for Aspinall. If he keeps us on the feet for too long, I think he has to be moving around so much. He has to be a moving target. Can't be standing still. And I know he won't. That's not the type of fighter Aspinall is. But you've seen a lot of the fighters that Pavlovich has knocked out in his recent fights, they've been guys that are pretty standstill. Aspinall's got to be circling around the cage. He's got to have movement like he's Cyril Gane, and just start to frustrate Pavlovich if he wants to win this fight. But man, it feels like if Pavlovich just catches him once, it's going to be trouble for Aspinall, and it'd be trouble for anybody in the heavyweight division.
Well, and you mentioned he has to move a lot.
Yeah.
For a heavyweight. Right? What happens if he is moving around a lot and then it gets into that second round, it gets into that third round, and he just starts gassing. And Pavlovich is just standing there waiting, not being overzealous, waiting to pick his shots in those first couple rounds, right? And then he has all the stamina and Aspinall's gas, and then he becomes a standstill target where Pavlovich is just going to be able to tee off and use that power to knock him out. So, I think you got to use the grappling here if you're Tom. And when you're on the feet, be very wary. Stay on the back foot and circle out like you mentioned, but don't do it too much. And risk gassing out if it. We don't think it's going to get in these later rounds, but what if it does? What if Tom's very patient and, like you mentioned, circles out and then he starts gassing? So you can't do that if it starts getting in these later rounds. These are heavyweights after all. We know how easily they gas, and we've never seen either of these men in a late round fight. So that would be a very interesting aspect, but. Let's be honest, it's probably not getting there.
Yeah, I doubt it. My prediction of this fight, I got to go with Sergey Pavlovich here, and something that isn't really talked about a whole lot. I know it's not super short notice. I know Aspinall's had a little bit of time to prepare, but Pavlovich was getting ready to be the backup for the title fight. He was getting ready. He was in shape. He was going to make weight. Everything was on track to fight on this card if he needed to, and here he is. He is fighting on this card. Aspinall stepping up on pretty short notice. I know for heavyweights in general, they don't have to cut much weight, or they don't have to cut weight at all. So that won't be a concern, the weight cutting process. But the short notice, not having a whole lot of time to prepare, that's something that isn't talked about a whole lot, and that's something that's going to be a disadvantage for Aspinall.
Yeah, and with Pavlovich, he's at American Top Team. It feels like he's always been ready. This would have been his second time backing up a heavyweight title fight, right?
Yeah.
I think he backed up the Cyril Gane and John Jones fight, John Jones' first fight. So he's always ready to take. He was ready to take on John Jones. That shows you how ready he would have been.
Yeah.
And obviously John Jones ends up pulling out, but so he's getting his title shot. Finally, being the backup fighter pays off. He gets the opportunity, and like you mentioned, man, who knows what Tom Aspinall was doing? He's talked about after his Topuria performance, sitting out and waiting for a Cyril Gane, waiting for the title picture to open up to fight a John Jones, right? So who knows if he's even been in training at all. Right, he's a big beer drinker, this lad. So we could be some straight Volk stuff, pulling him off the couch with a big old gut. We could be seeing an out of shape Tom Aspinall. That's a great point, man. I really didn't even think of that.
Yeah,
that is a huge aspect of this fight that it'll be interesting to see. And I'm still gonna pick him.
You're still gonna pick Aspinall. I'm going with Pavlovich, man. I think there's just going to be a point in time. I think it'll be late into round one. I think both guys are going to be a little bit hesitant at the beginning. I think they respect each other. I think they know not to blitz in, do anything crazy early on. But I think late into round one, I think there's going to come a point where we see this with a lot of Tom Aspinall fights, how he charges in and throws those like looping shots. I'm worried about that happening. I'm worried a check hook from Pavlovich coming through and stumbling him. And if you get stumbled by Pavlovich, he's going to pour on more shots, and it's going to keep going. And I think ultimately, I'm going to go with a late round one TKO for Sergey Pavlovich. He'll be your interim heavyweight champion come Saturday night.
And I'm gonna go with a similar route. I think it'll start slower, but you talked about Pavlovich's hand speed. Aspinall's got the fastest hands at heavyweight.
That's true.
And nobody's been able to catch Pavlovich. I think Tom Aspinall will finally catch him with a speedy right hand down the middle. He's not going to sleep him, right? He doesn't. I don't know if Pavlovich can get slept. He's such a meatball, but just a speedy right hand. He won't see it coming. He's going to drop Pavlovich, and like you said, it's a big guy on top of you, just raining down ground and pound. And Aspinall, he did it in the Topuria fight, right? Just an elbow and then a straight right, dropped him, ground and pound. I see it going similarly. I think just the speed of Aspinall will catch Pavlovich like he hasn't been caught before. It'll drop him, ground and pound, TKO round one. And the legend of these two with the quick finishes will live on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, either way, if one of our predictions comes true, that means the average fight time of these fighters remains relatively unchanged.
Will not be going up too much.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll move on to the third fight of this card, Jessica Andrade versus Mackenzie Dern. Andrade, she's on a 3-fight skid, granted against great fighters, but she's been finished in each of her last 3. She needs to get back on track here against a solid fighter, Mackenzie Dern. What do you make of this one?
Yeah, I mean, just another tough matchup for Andrade here. It feels like finding not a huge size advantage, but Andrade is always going to give up size, being a 5'1" female, right, with no titties. So she's not a built woman, right?
Yeah.
It's very strange. She's strong. Don't no doubt about that. She is a freak of nature athletically. She can pick up any woman and slam her. We saw that with Rose Namajunas. She picked up a big slammer. So I'm not saying she can't go out there and flash knock out Mackenzie Dern, because Mackenzie Dern's not good by any means.
No.
But it just feels like a bigger woman with jiu-jitsu. These past 3 performances, she keeps getting finished, and I see the path going the same way. I think Mackenzie Dern's got great jiu-jitsu, and she'll probably catch her in guard in a triangle or something.
I think Mackenzie Dern, she definitely has the advantage on the ground. I know we've seen Andrade get some subs, but she lost by sub to Erin Blanchfield. She lost by sub in a recent fight against Tatiana Suarez. And in between that, sandwiched in is that vicious knockout against Yan Xiaonan. So tough skid for her. I think it continues. I think Mackenzie Dern gets the best of her on the ground. I don't think this is going to end in a finish. I think this will go to a decision. But I think Mackenzie Dern is going to coast. I think she'll have a lot of control time on the ground. Possibly win some exchanges on the feet. I think she'll be smart enough to avoid getting slept by Andrade, because I know she respects the power that Andrade has. Everybody has to have that respect for her power if they fight her. But ultimately, I think Mackenzie Dern is going to get the better of her on the ground, win this by 29-28. maybe a 30-27 decision.
Yeah.
Even if it is 29-28, I don't think there'll be much question about who won the fight.
Very, very specific prediction. I'm going to go a specific prediction because I'm going to go armbar for Mackenzie Dern.
There you go.
The sub in the second round. And I'm only saying second round because I wanted to get done quick so we can get to these last two fights. Let's be honest. Nobody is buying this pay-per-view to watch this fight. And I hope it ends as quickly as possible. But it is a women's MMA fight after all, so it'll probably at least go to the second round. And I'm going to predict second round sub armbar for Mackenzie Dern.
There we go. We'll talk about another fight on this card. Definitely won't go too long. Benoit Saint Denis and Matt Frevola. Matt Frevola is defending his spot in the top 15. This one is not going the distance. This one is not going the distance. Both these guys have crazy power. I'd say Frevola has more power in his hands. He's got some dynamite for fists. But man, Benoit Saint Denis, we know he has the power. We've seen it in some of his fights. And he has that offensive wrestling and his pace. His pace is crazy. This should be a banger of a fight. What do you make of this one?
And I think the main difference in this fight will be that Benoit Saint Denis in the clinch with a dirty striking, elbows, knees in the clinch is going to make a huge difference. He's going to have to utilize it because, like you mentioned, Frevola, pound for pound probably has more power than Saint Denis. So you don't want to stand there and box with, dynamite Matt Frevola, right? So that New York power is legit, ladies. Long Island, that they hit over there. So don't want to stand in box with Matt Frevola. And I don't think Saint Denis will. Like you mentioned, his offensive wrestling is really good. And he'll get this to the cage. He'll use those elbows. He'll cut up Frevola bad. Both these guys will probably be bleeding all over this canvas. Yeah. And I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, this is going to be a hell of a fight. I do worry a little bit with Saint Denis. He gets a little bit reckless at times. He chases those finishes really hard. And a guy like Matt Frevola, who has that good boxing and that power, I'm worried that he could catch him getting reckless. Matt Frevola backed up against the cage and just come through with a straight right or something and put his lights out. I worry about that with Saint Denis. And Frevola's a great fighter. He's ranked for a reason in a good division at lightweight. So I do worry about that a little bit with Saint Denis. But, man, I think he's a bit more well-rounded, and he's on a tear. The momentum is crazy right now for Saint Denis. Obviously, he beat Ishmael Bonfim, who I know he missed weight, so we didn't get to see how he'd perform last weekend, but looked like a great prospect in lightweight. Made quick work of him, and then went out there and beat Thiago Moises dominantly. He's a great fighter. I ultimately think Saint Denis gets this done, but I do worry about that power that Frevola has.
Yeah, and Moises, his last opponent, was someone that I thought could give him some fits in the grappling department. He completely shut that out and really, used it against Moises in his own right. So, Saint Denis, he's young. He seems to be leveling up in all aspects of his game. And I just think, Frevola, I'm not going to call Frevola one-dimensional. I think if it went down to the ground, he could have some success. Yeah. But Saint Denis just seems to be, he's going like this. He's on a tear. And I think he's going to make this a dirty fight, get it in the clinch, and just cut up Frevola. And I actually think it could go to a decision here. You said guaranteed finish. I could see it going 3 rounds, just a war. I could sneaky see this, stealing the night.
Fight of the night?
Fight of the night, right.
Possible.
Who knows? Maybe the crazy tenures of the guys in the main and co-main, won't live up to the hype, and it'll be kind of boring. I hope not. But, I could see this sneaky stealing fight of the night here and just being a 3-round war from both men. I'm going to pick Saint Denis because he's just on an upward spiral. But I don't think either man will be looked down on after this fight.
Fair. My prediction, I worry about the power of Frevola. I worry about his boxing, and I worry about how reckless Saint Denis gets. But ultimately, I'm going with what my gut tells me. Who's the better fighter? I'm going with Saint Denis. I think he's the better fighter in this one. I think he's more well-rounded. He has that wrestling that he can go to if he starts losing some exchanges on the feet. And if he just, if he just doesn't get too reckless, doesn't get caught by a massive Matt Frevola punch, I think he'll get out of here with a win. I'm going to go late round 2 TKO. I think he'll be on Saint Denis or Frevola's back or something. He'll have him on the ground. He'll finish this fight by ground and pound. I think this fight will end in a finish for Benoit Saint Denis.
I like it, man. I like it.
Awesome. We'll move on to the main card opener, Diego Lopez versus Pat Sabatini. Diego Lopez, our favorite fighter, everyone's favorite fighter. We all love Diego Lopez. He's fighting another guy with some great Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Both guys have some submissions on their record, of course. Both guys are threats off their backs. This should be a fun fight. I'm excited for this one to get down to the mat.
Yeah, Diego Lopez, it feels like, if you want to get him on his back, he's plenty fine with it.
Yeah.
I mean, it seemed like he was almost inviting the sub in his last fight. Please, get in my guard. I dare you. I dare you. With my Mexican-Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I dare you. He trains with all those. He trains in Mexico, which is very interesting. But and the legend of Diego Lopez, I don't even want to talk about this fight like, matchups and stylistic, whatever. No, the legend of Diego Lopez is going to carry into UFC 295, and he is winning this fight, man. He's a future champ.
Man, that's a bold take. I love Diego Lopez. I'm not gonna call him a future champ yet, but I'll give him some praise. Don't get me wrong. I'll be the nerd here. I'll talk about the stylistic matchup here. Great Brazilian jiu-jitsu on both sides here. I think Lopez, although we haven't seen much of his striking in either of his fights, I think he has the edge on the feet, and he's the younger guy here. Like you've mentioned a lot in this episode, he's the younger, hungrier guy. He's climbing the rankings. Pat Sabatini getting a little older. I think it's Diego Lopez's time. I think he's, any position you put him in a fight, I think he's going to be dangerous. And ultimately, I think he gets out of there. I'm going to say a round 1 sub for Diego Lopez. I don't think he picks up back-to-back round 1 submissions.
To have a performance like Diego Lopez had in his debut on short notice against a top 10 guy, Evloev in his own right, who's a great fighter, how can you not root for him in every fight? And with that being said, I'm going to go round 1 sub because, Diego Lopez, the legend of Diego Lopez will reign.
Yep.
And it's going to be skyrocketing. I said Saint Denis is skyrocketing. Diego Lopez is skyrocketing.
Yeah.
Straight to the top 15 after this performance. He's going to make quick work of Pat Sabatini. And man, watch out for Diego Lopez. That's all I can say.
I love it. With that, we'll move on to this past weekend's fight night card down in Sao Paulo, Brazil. We'll jump right into the main event. I don't have much to talk about other than Jailton Almeida is a fucking bum. He's a bum. What a horrible performance. You get Derek Lewis on short notice in your hometown, right? A guy, mind you, Sergey Spivak took him down, subbed him, no problem, right? Sergey Spivak was able to do this. And we were talking about Jailton Almeida as the best grappler in the heavyweight division, right? Sergey Spivak took Derek Lewis down, subbed him, boom, just like that, no problem. Almeida laid on him in mount for 5 rounds and did absolutely nothing. Didn't throw any ground and pound. He was in mount and did nothing. Didn't throw any ground and pound. Just held him there and just looked at him. It was such a strange performance. He did go for some arm triangles. He had, some of those were tight, but they weren't all the way in. Just an embarrassing performance. And somehow in a dominant decision win for Jailton Almeida, his stock plummets.
He literally feels like the loser of this fight. And he won the easiest 50-45 you'll ever see in your life.
Yep. And he had the nerve to ask that Brazilian crowd, were you proud of what you saw or whatever it was?
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. Asking, probably begging Dana for a fight of them. Fuck you. Jailton Almeida, this is a guy that, I think we were both excited about. You see the finish rate. I've always said he's too small for heavyweight. I mean, he's 235. You could, Alex Pereira is 235. You can cut down to 205. Yeah. Alex Pereira was cutting to fucking middleweight. So, and I'm not going to call Jailton Almeida lazy because, he's a great fighter. And his style is unstoppable, especially at heavyweight with these fat slobs.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. But it just seems like a lack of hunger, and I'm a big guy in saying don't cut weight if you don't want to, right? Don't kill yourself. But he's a smaller heavyweight. And we're never going to see any of these big heavyweights challenge him because they're all fat slobs. Yeah. He's going to take them all down and do exactly what he just did. And maybe he'll be able to sub some of them, Maybe he'll find an arm triangle here and there. But who cares? And
he's been able to. He's in his past fights, he's had no problem finding the sub. It's not – I don't think his size is really the problem. I don't think him being undersized for that heavyweight division has really deterred him much. He's had no problem taking down these Parker Porter builds, slamming them down, and rear naked choking them. We've seen it time and time again. But for some reason in this fight, this should have been a star-making performance. He gets a big name in Derek Lewis. He gets it all set up in his favor. He gets it in his hometown in Brazil. Short notice Derek Lewis. Washed Derek Lewis. I know he knocked out Rogério de Lima, but come on. I mean, this is Derek Lewis is on the decline. He has every opportunity to go out there and make himself a star. by subbing Derek Lewis and doing it in front of his Brazilian crowd. And instead, he lays in mount for 25 minutes and just stares Derek Lewis in the eyes. Doesn't throw any. He throws some massive elbows. Derek Lewis didn't even do anything to defend the ground and pound. He was eating the shots, and Jailton Almeida wasn't throwing anything. It was mind-boggling. I don't get it.
And Derek Lewis is just there for a paycheck to pay off these fines he's going to be getting from staying in jail here soon. Yeah. And so, he's there for a paycheck. He's gladly just sitting in mount, eating these weak-ass fists that Jailton Almeida has. Yeah. And like you said, you're in full mount. Even if you can't get this up, the arm triangle isn't landing. Derek Lewis is letting you right back into mount. Throw some elbows. Even he started throwing shots to the body. More. Yeah. It is sad that when you are in full mount, the referee has to say, pick up the pace, do something. Yeah, try and advance your position. Do anything, please. I don't want to have to stand you up in full mount because that would just be straight up embarrassing.
Terrible. I don't know who they're going to match him up with next. Better not be Cyril Gahn. That would be pitiful. Don't even rebook the Curtis Blades fight. Curtis Blades would beat him. He doesn't deserve Curtis Blades after what we just saw. The highest ranked fighter he deserves. And I think this is the matchup to make because embarrassing performance, but I don't want to go too hard on the guy. Sergey Spivak, the guy who beat Derek Lewis. Sergey Spivak took him down and then subbed him. Jailton Almeida wasn't able to do that, so I don't think he deserves any higher level of competition than Sergey Spivak.
And I do think this is a one-off. I think Jailton will definitely search for more subs. And Derek Lewis is such a freak where you got to worry about him just exploding out from the bottom and getting up. That obviously he might have been scared of overcommitting on his strikes and Derek Lewis just getting up. And then you can get knocked out, right? So I think this was just a case of Jailton fighting scared for whatever reason. He did not want any scenario where Derek Lewis could get up and strike. And albeit it made it the worst main event fight probably we're going to see this year. Yeah. And not forwarding his career at all. In the UFC's eyes, this is probably downing his stock, if nothing else. And will he ever get a title shot now because of this pathetic performance? But I do think he'll search for subs in his future fights, but he's got to get back on a finishing streak if he wants to get anywhere near these top 3 fighters he's calling out.
Yeah, I understand being scared of Derek Lewis. He's such a powerful dude. So yes, he's able to push off from bottom and just stand up, as he says. He's able to do that. But if you're that scared of the threat he possesses on the feet, what are you going to do in this heavyweight division? How are you going to survive in this division when you got guys like Sergey Pavlovich at the top? When you got Cyril Gahn, I know he's a heavyweight, but he's one of the best pound-for-pound strikers in the world. What are you going to do against these guys who are so good on the feet if you're so scared to trade with Derek Lewis that you'll lay on him in full mount for 25 minutes and just stare at him? It's ridiculous.
And if he keeps doing this, he's going to get into the Bilal Muhammad range, where he's on the blacklist from ever getting a title fight ever, no matter how deserving he is. Dana White, I feel like
he's going to have to win like 20 straight.
Yeah, exactly. And Bilal Muhammad's won like 20 straight, and he's not going to get a title shot.
Yeah.
Like, he's going to have to start getting finishes again. He can't become, remember the decision, Jailton Almeida. He can't do that.
Yeah.
He's got to grow some balls. And if you're scared of the power, cut the weight, go down to 205, and you can finish any of these dudes. Yep. And they're way smaller. They're going to be even easier to take down and submit.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you're scared of heavyweight power, either move down or grow a pair. Simple.
Yep. Simple as that. We'll move on to the co-main event of this card. Gabriel Bonfim gets fraud checked by Nicholas Dalby. Nicholas Dalby picks up his first UFC finish against Gabriel Bonfim. Just a shocking outcome. Completely shocking outcome. We saw a big flaw in Bonfim's game this weekend, which is his gas tank. He started to tire out in round 2, ate a couple of big knees up the middle, and that put him down, lights out. That was it.
And respect to Dalby. I mean, he showed some grit to stay in that fight in the first round. What we thought would happen was happening in the first round. It was Bonfim. The forward pressure is insane. Don't get me wrong. He's still an exciting prospect. Yeah. This isn't the end of real Bonfim. Mm-hmm. Fraud check's harsh. We see a weakness.
It was Nicholas Dalby's first UFC finish, which is deeply concerning, though. And he's gone to close decisions with some really bad fighters.
I understand. But we've seen a weakness, and hopefully the coaches and hopefully Gabriel himself sees I'm not immortal, right? I got to slow down these first rounds. My striking is so good that I don't have to leave it all out there and look for the finish in the first round. Yeah. And he'll get better. He'll pace himself better. he's grappling too. This guy's a complete fighter, and he's got to get back to just not fighting dumb, as you say, not yeah, just fight smarter, and you'll get some victories, and you won't lose to Nicholas Dalby, whatever his fucking name is, and first UFC finish, whatever. What a joke. But
don't throw everything out there in round one. Don't empty the gas tank in round one. Pace yourself a little bit better. We know he has the talent, the skills. There's no doubt about that. But that was a very concerning performance from him.
Yeah, got to bounce back better and show some cardio in your next few fights if you want to be taken seriously in the UFC.
Yeah, a couple other fights on this card. Rodrigo Nascimento Ferreira versus Dontel Mays went to a pretty certain decision, not much controversy there. Same with Caio Borralho versus Abus Magomedov. Abus has no gas tank. Another pretty clear decision victory. Couple of decent fights.
Good little fights,
Good little fights. It was an average fight night card.
And you'd like to see Borralho do more. I know it's a short notice fight against a scary Russian German dude.
Yeah.
But it's a 1 round scary Russian German dude.
Yeah. After that, he is nothing.
So in that second and third round, you'd like to see Borralho push the pace a little, get a finish like a Sean Strickland did. And that's why, Sean Strickland's champ. He probably didn't deserve a title shot off of beating Abus Magomedov, but he got it. And
now he's the champ.
Yeah, and he got a quick finish and earned a title shot off of it. And Borralho, you would have liked to see a finish there because he's a pretty good prospect in his own right. So, he's not going to be skyrocketing up the ranks. I know he called out – didn't he call it Dricus?
Dricus.
Give me a break.
Call out.
Give me a
break. At least finish a boost if you're going to call it Dricus. Come on. Ridiculous.
You got to get finishes if you're fighting top 5 guys here. So, I don't know where Borralho goes from here. I'm sure he'll get a top 10 guy, fringe top 10, and hopefully he starts getting some finishes here.
Yeah, absolutely. Elvis Brenner opened up the main card with a bang. Nasty knockout. I know it was against a short notice fighter, I think Contender Series fighter, but he stamped. We know what Elvis Brenner got. He got that crazy win over Garam Kutateladze, and now picks up a big win in this fight. He looks good. I think he's ready for a fringe top 15, maybe even a guy in the back end of the top 15. I think he's ready for that. He's a killer.
He's just he's a pure UFC fighter there. He just shows insane grit, and he has big power. And that's exactly what you want if you're the promotion. Highlight finishes. They're going to be on those highlight reels to end the year. That guy makes you money. That guy makes money for the sport.
Absolutely.
And, great fighter. Great fighter.
Hell of a knockout to open up the card. That's all we got for you today on this week's episode of UFC Casuals. We'll be back next week. We'll be recapping UFC 295. I'm sure there'll be more to talk about. So until then, we'll see you guys.
I cannot wait to see what transpires this weekend.
It's going to be crazy.
It's going to be crazy, man.